This podcast contains gambling references. You know the score. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-858-858 or your local state gambling helpline.
9 podcasts.
This is 6 Tackles with Gus, with Matthew Thompson and Gus Gould.
Been looking forward to this all season. 6 Tackles with Gus, Finals edition. You like the sound of that, Gussie?
Love finals, best time of the year.
Yep. It's getting warm. Good horses are back.
Yeah, I got my horse in this week.
Have you?
Yeah.
Wheelhouse?
No.
Oh.
He's in Singapore.
Is he?
Yeah. Sold him.
Oh, you sold him?
Yep.
Which one have you? Oh, you got Tycoonist.
Tycoonist. But he's drawn a bad barrier, so I don't know if he'll go around.
Gee, you draw some bad gates.
Drew 12. I think I drew 12 every time we go around.
How good's owning a horse? The ups and downs of horse ownership.
I don't even look anymore. I just know we've got barrier 12. I don't think they put us in the draw. I think they just...
What about when you had the all-up last year? Didn't you have both your horses in the big all-up and you ran second? Oh, fair dinkum. Yes, Rugby League podcast. We're talking about gambling. We're here thanks to BlueBet, strangely enough. On the show today, 4 cracking finals to preview. The end is nigh for Craig Bellamy. I thought he spoke beautifully on my 100% footy on Monday. Always so great to hear from him. His demeanour, when you get him in that environment, is the opposite of what you see in the coach's box, isn't it? Like, he's such a considered, mild-mannered, respectful bloke.
Yeah, and personally, he's different again. You know, he's a real footy head. He loves his game. He's a great bloke, good country boy, terrific man.
Where's he from?
I don't know. He played with the Canberra Raiders, but I think he's from down that way. I don't know. I won't take a guess because I don't want to get it wrong.
Craig Bellamy. No, the NRL bloke, not the soccer bloke. Born Portland. That must be it. That's Newcastle way, isn't it?
Don't know.
Central Tablelands of New South Wales. Portland. Gee, he's a long way out there.
Yeah.
So it's between it's Bathurst Mudgee way.
Yep.
What a great start to this podcast. Who's the coolest man in rugby league according to 6 Tackles? Aside from Gus, we are going to reveal it a little bit later. Gus, they say when you're upset and you've got things on your mind, you've got to get it off your chest. Now, this is your podcast, but I'm hoping you could play counsellor to me just for a little bit because I've got the pips.
What's up now?
Two issues this week. Now, I'm a pretty chilled kind of bloke, but I'm a bit cranky.
That's not a lie straight away.
No, I am. You know me, I'm pretty relaxed. Manly and finals venues have really given me the pips. Can I start? I'll start with Manly. Tell me what you think.
Go with Manly.
This is how I see it. They got a roster. They got 3 world-class players in their roster. The 2 brothers and DCE. The rest of them, they got some handy players there, but they got a lot of young guys and they got a few journeymen. So what's a pass mark for Manly? Finals on their roster. Make the finals, yeah? Would you say so?
Yeah.
Did they finish 4th last year?
Yep.
Like that was punching miles above their weight. They had Tom out
after getting belted in their first 4 games.
Yeah. And they had Tom out for a stack of time last year, and he's barely been there at all this year. They were on track to make the finals again this year. Like they were there until the pride jumper thing, which was a product of it was a blue from the administration. So who fronts up? Des and Daly Cherry Evans. And they apologised for what happened. And Des happened to mention during that podcast that it was a administrative blunder, which apparently the board have got their backs up about. And so the capitulation after the pride jumper thing, where they lost 7 games in a row, is now Des Hasler's fault. And they're talking about replacing him from the bloke who coaches Blacktown Workers. Like, how's it Des's fault? They wouldn't have made the finals last year if Des wasn't the coach, and they wouldn't have been anywhere near it this year.
Was that it?
Am I right or wrong?
Well, as I said on 100% footy the other night, right from the opening gambit, they said, what did you learn about the football this week? I said, well, I don't take a lot of notice of media scuttlebutt. I don't take a lot of notice of agenda-driven drivel and, you know, some of the claims that are made. But I said, if anything is anywhere near true, that someone at Manly, and I guess not everyone, but someone at Manly thinks that football team and that football club would be a better place without Des Hasler, then I'm an astronaut. I can't understand the thinking with that at all. with all the clubs that are currently struggling for coaches, and every time someone needs a new coach, there's a struggle to go through the list to see who's available. To think that you're going to let one of the game's premier coaches, a Manly legend, and given the way the team performed last year, and this year we're still in the running to make the 8 without Tom.
That's right.
Tom had been injured for a long time. Now, so far as the Pride jersey controversy, I don't really know all the facts as to who was responsible for it, who was informed of it, whose opinions were garnered for that. I don't know how it's been handled internally, but it was certainly a disaster, a PR disaster from the outside looking in. And it, as I said on this podcast, it was painful to watch Des Hasler go to a press conference to try and appease everybody who may or may not have been affected by the events of that week, including his own players, etc.
Where were the board? Well, they were all hiding.
Well, I don't know where the board were.
And the owners in America.
I don't know who made the decision that Des had to front the media on this. I don't know who made the decision or wrote his script for what he was to say. It just appeared it was a very painful experience as he tried to apologise to absolutely everyone and tried to offend absolutely no one in what was obviously something that blindsided him in the preparation for that week. And, it's easy to say that was the event that led to losing their last 7 games. I don't think it can be entirely put on that. But that's what everyone is pointing to. And then suddenly we turn around and say they're going to replace the coach. Replace him with who?
The bloke from Blacktown Workers.
Well, I don't know that that's true either. But that would seem rather strange. You're talking about one of the game's most experienced and premier coaches. I think there's more chance, from what I understand, of Des walking away than being sacked. I don't think that those who think there's a lack of support for Des Hasler in the Manly club are reading the landscape very well at all. I think there's a groundswell of support for Des and his methods in the Manly club. But whoever's running that particular thing, or whether or not that's a media thing, I don't know. It's hard to comment. But
so let me put this one.
All I can say is, I don't think Manly are going to be any better if they let go of Des Hasler.
Oh, that's right. If you look at that roster they've got there, that's not on the face of that's not a premiership winning team. With Turbo out the whole time, is it?
Well, there was a time last year people were tipping them because they were having such a good run.
But
the players, some of the players that you said they've got 3 world-class players. Well, I'd say Kieran Foran's still a world-class player, and I'd say that Olakwadu is still is emerging as a world-class player. And there are other players in those sides that, on the back of those great players have really developed as footballers. I don't know where they stand with their salary cap. I don't know where they stand with development and roster management and all that sort of thing. But it's a very, very competitive football team. When it's fit and well and when it's at full strength. And Des Hasler is a highly performing, highly credentialed NRL coach. And in this era, that's gold to have someone like that on your books. I don't understand that at all. I don't understand the mentality of our game at times. And I tend to blame the media most of it, but sometimes, there's social media and there's people within clubs that have their own personal agendas and personal, vindictiveness and all sorts of things. And it all gets you never know what's being leaked to who or what's real and what's not. But it just seems that as a media, there is one winner every year in the competition and there's 15 losers and someone should have to pay the penalty for it. Well, that's absolutely not the case. Every year can't be perfect, and Manly's, you make your decision at the start of the season on your roster, on your team, because you spend most of your money on your marquee players. And if they can stay healthy for the whole season, then if you've got the right marquee players, you're probably going to have a good season. But they didn't have their marquee players for the season.
Oh, it's yeah. I mean, he's barely been there at all.
It's not as though he's finished with the cap catches. He's not at the back of the field with some of the other teams in the way they've performed.
If he hadn't had to put up with the Pride jersey situation, I mean, Des Hasler didn't make the decision to play in the Pride jersey and upset half the team. It wasn't his decision.
And as I said, you cannot change a button on your jersey design without having to go through a rather exhaustive process with the NRL and the manufacturers, and your sponsors, which takes anything up to 12 months when you're talking about supply of content or approval of jerseys. So that wasn't just a 1 week thing where some bloke in marketing decided, we'll play in this jersey for this weekend. That had to be done over months and months and months of preparation and approved by the league.
Yeah.
But no one flagged that this could have raised an issue. No one, there's no checklist here of what stakeholders we've engaged. We dealt with this 7 weeks ago. But if this is going to be used against Des, I find that absolutely ridiculous. I just can't imagine how anyone in their right mind could think Manly is going to be a better football team and a better club without Des Hasler coaching that side. And I don't care who they take there. Right? Des is a Manly boy. History shows that Manly boys,
if you're not from Manly, look out.
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
I can't see where they're possibly going to get a better credentialed coach to walk into that club and do what Des has done for it. That's just my personal opinion.
I spoke to a couple of Manly
I preface
people.
that by saying I don't know what happens internally over there. I've got no connection to the Manly club.
I spoke to a couple of Manly people. I just wanted to get a bit of a feel for this. And one of them in particular, I'm not going to name them, said there's a few people... There's a handful of people that are behind this, and a couple of them would be better off, would be better served in the cast of Jurassic Park. That's a quote.
Right.
The other issue that's given me the pips. If I finish first or second, Gus,
Yep.
do I not deserve an advantage ahead of 3 and 4?
You're going to get into this home ground.
Well, I've seen some people grandstanding about it this week, including on our network, and the notion that you'll pack out a neutral ground for a week 1 final is not right. It doesn't happen. We've been down this path before. But I've got some figures I'll get to. But if I finish first or second, now, it doesn't matter if it's Penrith or whoever. Say the Gold Coast finish first and the Tigers finish second. If they move those games to a neutral ground, what advantage do they get over 3 and 4? None.
Yeah, look, this goes to the history of our finals compilation, how we compile our final 8 of the season with the old McIntyre system, which was completely ridiculous in trying to get to a new model, which is the one we have today. But back in the day where we had many years ago, used to be a top 4 and then it was a top 5, the advantage of finishing minor premiers was you got a week's rest before you played your first semi-final. That was the advantage you got. And if you finished in the top 3, you got 2 bites of the cherry. Under the McIntyre system, if you got in the top 4, you got 2 bites of the cherry. But, there was no other advantage other than that for the top 4 sides, and it didn't really matter if you ran... the only advantage of being Team 1 is that you played Team 8. Team 2, you played Team 7. They saw that as an advantage, but there was no... And then we started, because we had regional teams and, the Cowboys finally made it, and then we've got to play it at their home ground. We've got to give them the home... This whole home ground thing came as a result of the whole Super League thing, So I've never... Let me say, I've never been for home ground finals. I don't believe in them. I really don't. The problem was that many of our teams started to play in the big stadia. So, you had Roosters who were at Sydney Football Stadium, and South Sydney were there, and they went to Accor Stadium, and the Bulldogs went to Accor Stadium. It used to be ANZ, used to be the Olympic, used to be the Homebush Stadium, and that sort of thing. So those that were playing regular home games out of the big stadiums would then seem to be at an advantage at finals time if we used those as the neutral venues and those as the stadiums that we should be playing our finals in. When I grew up, the thrill of finals football in any grade, first grade, second grade, under 23s, under 20s, third grade, whatever it was, the thrill was you'd play your home and away competition. And at the end of the home away competition, you went to play at the big ground, the Sydney Cricket Ground.
Yeah.
And after that, the Sydney Football Stadium. All right. And there were never sellout crowds to those games. When it was an all Sydney competition, it was much different because everyone was based here in Sydney. But once we brought Brisbane's and Canberra's and and those sort of Newcastles and that sort of into the game, it diluted what the crowd could potentially be for semi-finals in those big venues. I loved the thrill of playing on the neutral ground in the big stadium at finals time. That was the thrill of making the finals. Then they came up with this thing of week one having home semi-finals. And, we're going to have a home semi. Now, in the years that I was Panthers, we made 4 final series. I think 3 of those were entitled to a home ground. They wouldn't let us play at Penrith Park.
Yeah, that's right.
When I was there, we had to take it to, I think we took 2 to Allianz Stadium and another one we took to Accor or Homebush Stadium as our home city. All right, so there was no home ground advantage for Panthers in that regard.
Well, one of those years, Gus, was in 2017. Now, this is reinforcing the whole point that I made, that even though let's say the Sharks, they've sold it out. It's 11,500. Now, it's not
let's with the Sharks thing, I mean, that ground's not even at full capacity because of reconstructive work and renovation work and all that sort of thing as well. So, I understand that, it would be seen as an advantage, but there also has to be a consideration to the game itself. All right. Now, broadcasters like to broadcast in front of full-packed stadiums, all right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get a full-packed stadium at Accor in those times. I remember years ago we had a preliminary final between 2 Sydney teams that I think got 70,000 or 60,000 to a preliminary final in Sydney, which led me to thinking we need a 2-conference system. We need a Sydney grand final every year and a regional grand final and then a super grand final somewhere else. There's a lot of ground to cover here. But under the current rules, Panthers or Canberra or South Sydney or Manly or Townsville or Gold Coast or Newcastle, if they happen to finish 1 or 2 or 6 or 5 or 6, under the system that we have, are entitled to a home ground semi-final. So they're entitled to take their home ground and take it there. In the case of Parramatta and Penrith this week, they can fit 20,000. I would say that Golden West semi-final, if played at Accor, would at least double that crowd.
Yeah.
At least double it. All right? But Panthers are entitled to their advantage for the season that they've had under the current rules. It's not their fault that they're the rules, but finally they've been granted they don't have to play in their home city, because years ago we did. We had to take it to another ground.
Well, in 2017, you took it to Allianz.
Yep.
To play Manly. You got 15,000. You could have hit them at Penrith.
Yeah, Manly are not going to come across the bridge.
Well, that's right. But so how is the Sharks and North Queensland going? They're not. In fact, the Sharks and North Queensland played the same year at Allianz. They got 16,000.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a difference of 5,000 people. Everyone's jumping up and down saying, there's 20, 30,000 people denied a ticket to the game. It's rubbish.
Yeah, well, I think there's 20 or 30,000 denied to the Parramatta-Penrith game.
Well, probably true.
No risk about that.
But then if you took that one to a core...
The Shark thing, and this is where and they've glossed over this for years, but Canberra's and Melbourne's and Newcastle's and lesser extent Newcastle, but Titans and Townsville, and even to a lesser extent Brisbane, are going to attract lesser crowds down here if the game is down here in Sydney.
That's right.
Wouldn't matter if Brisbane was playing up at Kambukta West in a semi-final at Suncorp. They'll get there 40 or 50,000 come along to support the Broncos, but that's not the case down here in Sydney. The answer's a pineapple.
Well, we've either got to go
we get this every year, but I can remember several years ago when Jared Haynes' Parramatta were making that magical run. I think it was the year that they played Dragons in the last game of the Premiership at Jubilee and then played them again in the semi-final.
08, wasn't it?
Yeah, the week after. 09, I think, was his magic year. And I've got no doubt that those two big supporter bases, Parramatta and St George, would have got 50 or 60,000 if played in the big stadium. They certainly would have filled Allianz Stadium, Sydney Football Stadium as it was at the time, but the rules were you get a home semi-final, so you get a home semi-final. We did the home semi-final thing for Cowboys and Canberras and Melbournes and Brisbanes because that's what everyone, that's everyone's...
But the system is the system. So what you're saying, we either go to neutral grounds for everyone...
Yeah.
Or, see, and I know my time for my counselling session is nearly up. Why should Penrith and Cronulla, who finished first and second, have to move their games to fit more fans in week one? When Melbourne, but this is what people are saying, Melbourne finished fifth because they don't have big stadiums. Melbourne finished fifth; they're going to get a home ground.
Yeah,
fifth. Has anyone thought about that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you either play them in neutral venues, or you go with this thing and put up with what you get in week one. I mean, that's just where it is. Yeah. Penrith will have a 30,000 seat stadium in a few years. All right, this was decided a decade ago, and they'll eventually get it. The Sharks are looking to renovate their ground and bring it up to 25,000 if they can. Whether that's the way the game should go, I don't know. I mean, I understand the local stadium and the suburban stadium thing. I get that, but big events, in time, we want big crowds at big stadiums. That's where the AFL are at the moment.
Yeah, you talked about the prelims. I mean, a preliminary final is a big event in itself.
Yep.
I think I could be wrong. I consider these games, first round finals, they're not on the same par as a grand final qualifier.
No, and to a young kid who grew up in Sydney and we went to the big ground to play on the semi-finals, it left me a little bit flat about the home ground semi-final thing. It didn't even feel like a semi-final sometimes when it just felt like another round. If you were in sudden death mode, well, that brought a little bit to it, but certainly if you're in the top four and bite of the cherry, it's...
Well, it'll feel like a final at Penrith on Friday, and it'll feel like a final in Cronulla on early Saturday. And I know they're not going to get as many, but Penrith, they will be hanging off the rafters. And when you finish first, you kind of deserve that.
No risk, no risk. And Penrith won the Premiership last year, but never had the joy of playing any finals or grand final here in Sydney at all, anywhere near their supporter base. So it's a big thrill for them to getting a home final. And they'll pack it out, and they'll win the game. And then they'll wait for their rivals in a fortnight's time. But it's the answer's a pineapple. It's just how our game has evolved and how we've evolved through, and the nature of our game now, which is Eastern Seaboard game. It's not a national rugby league. It's an Eastern Seaboard game, and our obsession with pleasing in the early days Brisbane and Melbourne and trying to build those up, and then appease, Cowboys who came in and finally made the finals and other things, and knowing full well that when those come to Sydney, they don't draw crowds for anyone. They don't bring anything to the competition down here. It does from a broadcast sense, it does from a paid television sense, but it doesn't bring crowds with it to Sydney fixtures.
Thanks, I feel better.
Why, I didn't give you an answer?
No, you just let me talk. Send me an invoice.
We could have done that out in the lunchroom. We're just bored.
As we get on to the next one, this is a great segue. A gentleman by the name of No Worries Sam on Ask Gus says, Gus, what's your favourite rivalry in the NRL and in all sport?
Favourite rivalry in the NRL and all sport.
Does that include Origin? I don't know.
Yeah, well, my favourite rivalry in all sport would be the Origin. I love the Ryder Cup.
Yeah.
The Ryder Cup is sensational. The President's Cup doesn't thrill me with anywhere near as much emotion or interest.
Not now, they're all out.
Other than it's the best golfers in the world. Best
What about the Ashes?
Yeah, Ashes cricket, wonderful. The best rivalry in our game, the longest running and the most intense rivalry is Rooster-Rabbitoh, without fail. The next in line would be Panther-Eel as a real rivalry. It's funny because when I was at the Roosters and when I was with the Bulldogs, we always had great rivalry with Dragons in those days. They were great rivalries. I loved the Anzac Day event and that rivalry between the Dragons and the Roosters. But the Roosters-Rabbitoh thing is real, and we're going to say it again this week, and we say it every time they play, and sometimes we think we say it too much, but we don't, because look at last weekend. Those two sides had a chance to rest players, but they didn't, because it was Roosters versus South Sydney.
The first 10 minutes was so good, like with the new stadium. It felt like a grand final.
Absolutely. And it'll be on again this Sunday. This will be intense, and it'll be intense with the Parramatta-Penrith game, really intense. Given that, Penrith are clearly the best side in the competition. They're runaway minor premier winners, but the other time's been beat them twice this year.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a fantastic event.
I'm glad you mentioned the Rabbitohs and Roosters before I get onto it. Who do the Bulldogs see as an arch rival? Do the Bulldogs have an arch rival?
Everyone.
Hate them all. Now,
everyone.
Do you reckon Latrell ran his comments past?
See, New South Wales, Queensland, Origin is
never doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah. When I was a kid growing up, it was Australia versus England.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Dad was big on Australia versus. We used to sit up and listen to the radio games played in England.
Poms used to bash us, didn't they?
Oh yeah.
Who's the most brutal of the Poms back in the day? Like that, but when I say they used to bash, like it was a next level bash, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was a violent game back then. It was, I can't express that enough. It was a violent game, vicious and violent.
I remember watching a test. I reckon it was early '90s. Don't know if it might have been the '90 Kangaroo Tour. One of the Poms got set off in the first tackle of the game for just to rake elbow straight in the side of the head. Might have been Barry Ward. Who was the great Ward? Kevin Ward.
Ward?
Might have been Kevin Ward. Latrell, do you reckon he ran his comments past the coach? He said the Roosters fans booing crossed the line in last week. What are you thinking?
Yeah.
It's going to turn it up even louder.
Yeah, I think he's just stirring them up. Latrell.
They booed him every time he went near the ball last week.
Yeah. He's an ex-player and he belted one of their players in the finals last year and they didn't like that. Of course he's going to get booed.
Yeah.
And it's Rabbitohs Roosters is going to get booed anyway.
And then I think Luke Keary fired back today in the paper basically say boo-hoo.
Boo-hoo, that's it.
It's good stuff, isn't it? I reckon... I was thinking last week as we sat here whether the fact they play each other in the last round detracts from the final. I think it adds a bit of mystery. I think it kind of adds to the whole thing that they played last week. And you've been we'll get your tips later, but you've been an advocate that the losing team learns more.
Yep.
The scoreboard probably didn't reflect how dominant the Roosters are. They've got a fair bit of ground to make up, Souths, but different game.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in a minute. But so far as the rivalry, once they got to that game, both of them knew that they were playing each other the following week. Both had a chance to rest key players. Neither did. Neither did. Not only that, they went at it like there was no tomorrow. Like this result was going to last for the rest of their lives. And you've got, Cameron Murray knocking himself out in his first tackle of the game. You've got Joseph Manu, who was probably under an injury cloud going into the game, finally rips that calf muscle, but still drags himself off the ground and throws himself into another tackle for his team, showing his commitment and the level of it. And there was no backing off from anyone at any stage of the game. Roosters were dominant. We'll probably talk about that game a little bit later, but there are some things to be learned for both sides out of that game, and one of the most important things, and they're both, very good coaches, is not to overreact too much to what happened. Don't overcompensate for what happened in that game, because that can leave you in difficult. It's not an easy situation. It doesn't happen with club football very often that you play the same team 2 weeks in a row. It's more prevalent in representative football, be it the 3-match test series or an Origin 3-game series where you're playing the same team, over multiple weeks. But it doesn't happen very often that you play the same team twice. And I've been through it several times as a coach. And there are things you must do, and there are things you must not do when that scenario comes around. And it's very important what both learn out of that game, but that they don't overcompensate either.
It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. The great thing about this week is that we've organically come up with matches that showcase those great rivalries. It hasn't been
it's incredible.
And any of the teams can win.
You got a final series where you've got two of the greatest rivalries that I've just mentioned in all time, two of the great local derbies, so Roosters, Rabbitohs, and Penrith, Parramatta, and then you've got, if there's another rivalry outside of that, the Storm Raider rivalry has been pretty good, mainly because of the relationship of the coaches and their proximity outside of Sydney teams and etc. But the Raiders have shown over the years they've got no fear about going down to Melbourne and beating them. They've gone down there and tested them on a number of occasions. So they'll have no fear about travelling to Melbourne for this game.
Won their last 4 there.
Yeah, so that sets up another great rivalry. And then the two new kids on the block, who normally this week would be saying, well, they're in rarefied air and maybe they haven't played at this level. How many have played at this level? Well, they're playing each other, so that sort of cancels it out. So the Cowboys, who weren't expected to be a top 8 team this year that have finished 3, and Craig Fitzgibbon and his Sharks are having an outstanding year down there, and with everything that they've done, no one was predicting that at the start of the season either. But they're actually playing each other.
great.
And Sharks have got the advantage because Cowboys are a different team away from Queensland, aren't they?
That's if they can find the ground.
The thing with this too is that both teams have had pretty fortunate draws. In particular, the Sharks, very fortunate draws in their game. Paul Gallen came up with a stat on 100% footy the other night that over the last 10 weeks, they've got the best defensive record in the competition. Well, they've played everyone outside the top 8, and the teams they played in the 8 had 17 players out through injuries and origin duties and all sorts of things as well. The Sharks have had an unbelievably soft draw this year. Incredibly soft draw. You've still got to win them. You've still got to go out and win them, and they've won them well. But the oxygen gets a little bit thin for the next month.
Still finished second, though, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, but they had an unbelievably easy draw compared to the other top 8 teams.
All right.
There's no getting away from that.
All right, we'll get your tips in a minute. Dennis the Menace asks, is Cole Murphy the toughest player to pawn a Jets jumper? Cole said he'd shout me a beer if I asked you that question.
Eddie.
Do you know Dennis? Dennis the Menace?
I don't know Dennis
he
the
might
Menace.
He might be a new team.
I think that's a non de plume, I think.
Do you reckon?
Dennis the Menace.
Cole Murphy. Talk to me about Cole Murphy.
Cole Murphy, a legend, Newtown legend,
Yeah.
champion bloke. I was actually sitting in Newtown. I worked at Newtown Leagues Club when I was going to university at University of New South Wales. So when I first left school, I went to study commerce law at the University of New South Wales, and Dad got me a job. Dad was a policeman in the Newtown area, and he got me a job picking up glasses and that at the Newtown Leagues Club. And I remember the first night I went in for my interview, and I was sitting in the bar there, and in came this bloke with the football people, and he came in, he had an earring on, which wasn't all that usual in those days, and and it was Cole Murphy coming in to sign his first ever contract with the Newtown Blue Bags at that stage. This is 1976.
You got a scoop there.
Yeah, and years later, I went to play with Newtown and play with Cole. Great bloke, champion man, tough, good player too. He had several knee operations in the 70s when one knee operation ended your career. It's not like it is today, where they fix them up so well. Like back in the old days, you get a cartilage injury, the way they did the operation, and nearly put you out for 12 months or career. Everyone was petrified of getting cartilage injuries, and let alone ACLs and MCL, PCLs, and all these sort of things. I can't remember people having ACLs injuries back in those days, but.
See the scars on the blokes that had operations.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're about 10 inches long.
Now they're getting metal knees and all that sort of thing. Cole had a number of terrible injuries as a young bloke, but then came through, and I think he was captaining the side when they got removed from the competition in '83. Chickamore, the great Chickamore, coached them in '83. They went to Campbelltown. And Cole coached and still sponsors today their New South Wales Cup team.
Right.
And the people that have kept the Newtown Jets alive all that time. And
did you say Newtown played at Campbelltown?
In their final year, 1983, they were the first to go out and play at Arana Park, was it, or something out there at Campbelltown? Yeah, they'd gone broke. We made the grand final in '81, but the club went broke. It sent the club broke, and within 2 years they were out of the competition.
Shame.
Yeah, it was.
Well, they still go around though at Henson Park. It's quite a day out there when they. And they play Penrith this week in a New South Wales Cup game. It'll be a beauty.
It's a cultural event. Yeah, they'll play the Penrith NRL team from last week.
Yeah, they will.
That was their reserve grade side.
Right, yeah. What position was Cole Murphy?
Back rower.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Dennis, I've asked the question. Gus, I to say he's the toughest player to pull on a Jets jumper. They've been some tough men at that club. That's hard.
Well, there might have been some people as tough, but none tougher.
Yep. NRLW, Gus, Sam Bremner. How good's she going? These are the sorts of stories. In the women's game, we've got to embrace this kind of stuff. She's had 2 years out becoming a mum, and she's come back at 30, and she's killing it in an unbeaten Roosters team who play Newcastle, who are also unbeaten, having not won a game last year this week. You'll see it on 9 from Allianz at 1:10 p.m. So the curtain raiser to Sunday footy, the unbeaten NRLW clubs.
Yeah, I'll get my first look at Allianz this week.
Oh,
I haven't been in there, so
that's right.
I've got to do the pre-match panel, so I'll get out there early to watch the women's game.
Good.
I'll have a little walk around Allianz.
You'll love it. I thought about you last week when we were there.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, the great years I spent at the Roosters as a coach and coaching director. That was our home ground, the old football stadium. And the first year the stadium was opened was 1988.
Hmm.
And the first Premiership winners there were the Bulldogs. I coached that side.
Yep.
So we won the first ever Premiership out of the Sydney Football Stadium. I remember we went in to have a look around it the week before the finals. Peter Moore said, we'll go out and have a look around the stadium. We had a look around the stadium, and he said, what do you think of it? I said, oh, it's magnificent. It's terrific. I said, what are they going to do on finals day? He said, what do you mean? I said, there's only 2 dressing rooms. He said, what? I said, there's only 2 dressing rooms there. So what are you going to do with the lower grades on finals days? Because you might get 6 different teams here. And he looked at me and his eyes wide and he said, I never noticed that. And it was true.
Oh.
And for years, on semi-final time, they'd play the 3 grades. They'd have to go down to the cricket ground and use the dressing rooms around there. Yeah. And then they built that cricket facility at the back and they had dressing rooms in underneath there.
Yeah.
So here they went out in 1988 and built this great new stadium
2 dressing rooms.
with 2 dressing rooms. And over time they were reconstructed and renovated and extended and all that sort of thing to try and make it better. But talk about architects and
didn't think.
Beautifully aesthetically pleasing but functionally useless.
So would you
the Sydney Football
on a
Stadium.
big game day there? Would you want to take the sheds at the Allianz, or would you want to take the cricket ground sheds?
Well, your lower grades were out there.
Yeah.
Right. So
so they'd use the cricket ground.
Yeah, you'd have all 3 grades, all 3 semi-finals at the game on the one day. But it's not like having all 3 grades for a home game. So when we were the Roosters, we'd have all 3 home games, all 3 grades out of the one dressing room. That was your club. Yeah. And we extended it a little bit and made it nice and did all that. So and the opposition would have to do the same. But in finals time, you might have 6 different teams from 6 different clubs
I know what you mean.
competing. So you couldn't be in each other's dressing room and doing all that. No. And at half time, you did, because you couldn't walk them back down to the cricket ground to the dressing rooms at half time. So they'd actually come into everyone else would stand on the side and wait for them to come in and do their half time talk and go. Yeah, no, it was terrible, ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Well, they've got each side, if you like, of the stadium at the new Allianz has 2 dressing rooms, which are just magnificent. So they're carbon copies. So there's 4 in there, but they're all exactly the same, and they've got recovery baths and anything you want there.
Yeah, I'll get a look at it at some stage.
You should go and have an ice bath before the game. Get yourself going. 6 tackle trivia. I think your chance here this week. Since 1999, how many times has the team that finished in 8th position won in week 1 of the finals, regardless of the system?
Not the McIntyre system.
So since 99, forget the systems.
Yeah.
How many times since 1999 has the team that has finished in 8th won in week 1 of the finals? We'll take a break and give Gus a chance to ponder that, and we'll come back with more. It took 9 years for the first eighth place victory in week 1 of the finals.
Yeah.
So how many do you think
there
have been?
I think that was the Warriors beating Storm.
Correct. Well done.
Because Craig Walker was, he was the, I think he was the S&C bloke for the Warriors, and Craig Walker, I'd given Craig Walker his start at the Roosters in 1995, and Ivan Cleary was coaching the Warriors, and it was played down at Olympic Park down there in Melbourne. And at half time, the scores were closed. And I was just about to get up and do the half-time stand-up for Channel 9, and Craig Walker ran over to me. He said, Gussie, do you think we're a chance? I said, of course, get into him. He was funny, Craig Walker. That was just something that come to me then. I remember that. So I remembered that it was the Warriors that beat Storm.
Very good. So the next 2, I've just told you, there's 3. I've just given it away. I'm never going to get a gig on Start the Century.
Never.
That's the worst thing I've ever done.
But the answer was always 3.
What am I thinking?
The answer was 3. I had it covered.
Yeah. So the next 2, how am I going? The 8th place teams made the grand final after winning in week 1.
Wow.
So who were they?
Wow. The 8th place team made the grand final. Wow.
Geez, Ricky would take a bit of heart in that if they can win this week.
The 8th place team made the grand final. I think one of them was the Cowboys.
Yep. 2017.
Yep.
Beat the Sharkies.
Yep.
In front of 16,115 fans at Allianz at a neutral ground.
Was the other one the Warriors again?
Nope.
The year they played Manly in the grand final?
No. You've actually mentioned in this podcast earlier. You've actually touched on it.
I touched on it.
Yeah, you touched on it.
Wow.
I don't know.
An 8th place team that played in the grand final. Cowboys did it.
It was quite spectacular what this team managed to do.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it?
Mm.
No.
There's a clue.
What's that?
Taking off.
What?
I'm taking off.
Looks like you're flapping your arms to me.
I'm a plane.
Oh, Jared Hunt,
Yes,
Parramatta.
yes,
Parramatta.
Gus. Yes, Gus.
Parramatta.
Yes.
Okay, 2009.
2009. And we touched on it because they play Dragons.
Yeah.
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 And not only did they play the Dragons, now, they got flogged. Did they not get beat by 50 in the last round of the Premiership? I reckon they did. And then they came out and beat him the week after. But he rested all his players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go, Hammer.
There you go. So, Warriors 2008 beat Melbourne down there. Eels beat Dragons. Cowboys beat Sharks.
Yep.
Well, Canberra beat Melbourne. Let's find out.
Yeah, look, they're a big chance.
Before we get there, coolest man in rugby league, you're wrong. You put up $1.10, Cameron Murray. The Souths fans have been outpolled by the Sharks fans. Congratulations to Nico Hines.
Yeah, but now I know why. I know why now. See, I know why, because Monday morning, what were South Sydney fans doing?
Yeah.
Getting online, trying to get tickets to Allianz Stadium.
Ah, yeah.
They weren't voting on our stupid poll. They were in there trying to get tickets for the semi-final. They had other things in mind.
Yeah.
Latrell was bagging the crowd. They got things on their mind, mate.
The right result. We've got the right result here. Nico Hines is the coolest man in rugby league, and we've confirmed it.
Well, we said that long before it happened, and we took all that time to do it.
Congratulations, Nico. We'll get a trophy made up for you.
South Sydney fans were too busy getting tickets.
That's another little chapter in the book of feuds. See, I reckon Nick Politis hired a hacker from Russia.
Wasn't too hard
to lock him out.
Wasn't too hard to hack it.
It's a shutout. So, half an hour, and by the time they got on,
all
all the Roosters fans had bought the tickets.
And this goes with the home ground advantage and everything too. Why is it that the members who go every week and got their set seat in the ground don't get the same for the semi-final? Why can't you just opt in at the start of the year that if you get a home ground semi-final, do you want your seat?
We should.
Yes, please. It's going to be $200. Don't care. Book me in. I'll do it. Why have we got to go in this day and age?
Because it doesn't the NRL administer all the finals, not the clubs?
Yeah, but it's easy to do.
Well, I understand that.
It's all the same database.
Yeah, they should. Absolutely, they should. If you're there all year, you
or
should be
we
allowed
can
to
go
be
back to the way it used to be when I was a kid. You'd have to go and sleep overnight outside the gates at the Sydney Cricket Ground and then race in with your blanket and your program and your esky and
You did that. What year did
save
you?
seats.
You slept at the cricket ground.
I slept at the cricket ground.
Was it a few times, or was it for a St George game? Wasn't it?
1977. I actually played for Panthers in the semi-final the week before.
And you slept out.
And then the next week I slept out in my St George jersey to follow the Dragons into the ground.
Are you serious?
With all my schoolmates.
Oh, what a scandal!
With all your schoolmates.
What
yeah.
a scandal!
Yeah. We parked outside the cricket ground. We slept outside the gates, and I think the gates didn't open until 11 o'clock, and it was hot too. And by then we'd been drinking all night, so
Did you?
You can imagine how we felt. And then it was a scramble. You race into the cricket ground. We went and sat in the Bill O'Reilly stand up on the Eastern Hill over on the eastern side there, and set up at the back of the grandstand. And we had eskies and blankets.
So you used to take your own then, didn't you?
You used to take your own drink, yeah. And then and virtually slept because we were pretty hungover from the night before.
You got on the drink all night.
Yeah, but it was great.
What a yarn.
The music and everything outside was terrific.
All right.
Loved it.
Let's have a look at the finals. Very exciting. Very, very exciting. Now, our mates at BlueBet, I'm just going to bring it up here. Penrith, Para, kick-off 7:55. The only place to see every minute of every final, live and free, including the grand final, which is exclusive to us, is here at Nine's Wide World of Sports. Gamble responsibly. Panthers $1.40, Para $2.95.
$2.95, eh?
So all the Panthers are. Do you know of the only team in the finals who have every one of their squad available is Penrith.
Mm-hmm.
They've timed it pretty well.
They'll nearly win all three competitions. Well, look, I think the Panthers are the best team in the competition. I think it was absolutely right that they rested all those players last week. They're coming in fresh. They've had a fortnight to prepare for this game. And at home, And they've got so many big game players now. I think the fact that they have such a large origin contingent is where you need to be winning premierships. That was proven the case in last year's final series, and I think it'll be the same this year. I just think their best is better than everyone else's. Parramatta, because of the rivalry and because of the fact that they've beaten them a couple of times, hold no fears in going to Penrith to beat them. But it will have to be not just good Parramatta that turns up, but very good Parramatta. They're capable. I'm not saying they're not capable. I think, if you were having a bet on the game, I think that I would back the outsider in this game just at the value. But I do expect the Panthers to beat them.
Last time they played in the final, it was 8-6. Do you reckon it'll be a similar scenario?
It was 8-6, and in that game, the penalty for that 8 thing was an innocuous high tackle on Liam Martin just before half-time.
No points.
And if the referee had have known that that was going to decide the game, you could never have given the penalty. It was ridiculous. It was a pedantic penalty, and it ended up being the difference between the two sides. And remember, too, that Parramatta played without Reid Marnie. They had no dummy half, specialist dummy half for that game. And late in the piece, where the game was under pressure, they actually made some mistakes out of dummy half leading into that. Look, there'll be no fear from Parramatta. And, their football, when it's good, is really good. They, too, have their high-profile representative class players. But I just think the Panthers are the better side and they will prevail. Whether the loser of this game can then bounce back and come back and challenge again at the back end remains to be seen. But this could well be a grand final preview.
Yeah. Cannot wait. 7:55. Not a spare seat at BlueBet Stadium Friday. Now, the early game, Saturday, 5:40, elimination final, Amy Park. Melbourne Storm v Canberra Raiders, the same prices on BlueBet, $1.40 Melbourne, $2.95 Canberra. In terms of team news, Melbourne, I'll bring it up here. Now, obviously, Whiten got a rest last week.
Yep.
Saturday, Elliott Whitehead. They come back in. The rest is as is, and Melbourne are unchanged from last week.
Yep.
Sorry, my mistake. Jerome Hughes has been named to play, so they are changing quite significantly.
Yeah,
although I'm hearing that he's no moral.
Yeah, he's no certainty to play, and Craig Bellamy said that to us on 100% footy the other night. They'll be ready, whatever. Cameron Munster has been sensational playing in the fullback position. Melbourne Storm have been down this road so many times. They know the way to the big one, but I just don't think they're going anywhere near as good as what they have in previous years. The Raiders, they've found some form at the back end of the season, but whether or not they can rise, I don't know that the preparation over the last couple of weeks, a big score against the Broncos and a ridiculous score at half-time against the Tigers. I don't think Ricky Stewart would have been overly thrilled with the second half, but by then it's self-preservation. You don't want to get hurt.
He took the half-back off at half-time.
Yeah, you just got to, So, again, I think that the Raiders are great value in the betting, but...
Storm have won 5 of the last 6 against them overall, even though they've got that great record at Amy Park.
Yep. Hard one.
A lot of it hinges on Hughes, doesn't it?
Yeah, hard one. Honestly, I've got to say I was a little disappointed in the Storm last week.
Well, they jagged 2 tries late. Like they were hammered. They were totally.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've seen a little bit too much of that. I think the Raiders are a great chance.
Raider.
I think Raiders are a great chance.
Ooh, little upset there from Gus. Ricky will love hearing that. They're going good, Canberra. All right, 7:50 kickoff for Sharks versus Cowboys. We're calling that together. That'll be a beauty. Now, I know who you're going to tip because I heard you.
No, I'm doing the Melbourne game. I think.
We're doing the Melbourne game. We're doing the Melbourne-Canberra game. Yes, we are. Sorry, my mistake.
Canberra,
and
yeah.
this will be... that's right. Salty and Fatty and Cam are doing Cronulla, North Queensland. Yes, we're doing Melbourne-Canberra. Now, the Sharks, how's this? Connor Tracy in. Dale Finucane in. Toby Rudolph in. William Kennedy in.
Yes.
4 big inclusions.
It is. Look, they've had an outstanding year. It's a while since they've played a top quality side at full strength. And even in winning a lot of these games, I can't say it's been over convincing. I don't know that it's been the perfect draw for them. They've had some very easy wins in recent times. The Cowboys are a team that impressed me, but I'm not so sure away from Queensland whether or not they can raise that next step. But I really thought the Cowboys could beat South Sydney a couple of weeks ago, and they turned up with the wrong game. They didn't even turn up with their own game.
That was the game Dearden was out.
Yeah, it really clunky, and it just thought, well, if I knew you were going to play like that, I mean, but I don't know that they'll get it wrong this time. I think I was really impressed, even though they played the Penrith reserve grade last week, I was really impressed with their intensity and their attention to detail. They really pushed themselves hard in that contest, despite the fact they were playing, New South Wales Cup standard opposition. It's
got the potential to be the best game of the weekend, that one.
Yeah, the Bermuda Triangle. Strange things happen down there.
They might not turn up.
Strange things happen down there. I like the Cowboys.
Cowboy.
Yeah.
Two outsiders for the Gus Meister.
I think their football will trouble the Shark.
$1.70 Cronulla, $2.15 on BlueBet, the market. And to round us out for week 1 of the finals, either the Roosters or Souths will say ta-ta to season 2022. The Roosters $1.60, South Sydney $2.35. Now, team news is all important here, and Cam Murray is telling everyone he's going to be fine. And he's not a fibber, so he'll be there. Campbell Graham's back. Damien Cook is back. For the Roosters, Joey Manu is out. God, that's a loss. Radley is in, though. So is Daniel Tupou at the moment. He's been named. He's been running at training. And Joseph Swali'i is also in. The centres at the moment, though, are Momirovski and Drew Hutchison because of no Joey Manu. And they're not going to start with Lodge on the bench, are they? In 17, he's been named.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
So, South's bolstered. And obviously Manu is a massive loss for the Roosters.
Yeah, incredible, isn't it? And I've said this of the Roosters. They've made a terrific run to get through to where they are. And their football is capable, their football at their best at full strength is capable of winning a premiership. It's capable of matching it with a Panther on the big day. But I've said they're not going to get there. They can't keep playing this physical. Either the injury's going to get them, wear and tear's going to get them, or the judiciary's going to get them. And all three are playing their part. Our games officials, our games administrators, our games officials, our media, they can't handle the intensity with which some of these games are played. They really can't handle it.
We almost got through a podcast without mentioning the refs.
They can't handle the physicality. It scares them. We must do something about it. The game needs to be safe enough for 12. Anyway. And talking about learning out of this game, the Roosters came out and blew them away. South Sydney weren't in the contest. Roosters were just too physically strong for them. So the obvious reaction from South Sydney is, well, we need to start better. And at the back end of the game, where South Sydney was sort of getting the run of the play and starting to score a couple of tries, which the Roosters can do this. The Roosters can stop a little bit in games. They can be perfect for 18 or 20 sets of 6, and then they make a mistake, and then they'll make another. And then they'll, get an injury or a head bin or something or other, a HIA, and it changes the dynamic. And they can be, once they get on the wrong leg, they can stay on the wrong leg for a period of time as well. So South Sydney will be thinking, we need to improve the start of our game. Roosters, it's easy for them to think, well, we've got the start right, we've got to finish the back end of the game right. When really the Roosters have got to be saying that's how we have to play. We have to beat South Sydney. We have to get over them and get over them early. Right, and then, worry about hanging on at the back end of the game. But what we can't do is allow South Sydney to get off to a good start with the confidence that they can be even better at the back end of the game.
Latrell didn't play a factor last week.
No, and that's where the Roosters need to be. You know, they call it putting them on the chopping block. They'll pick a player out of the opposition team who could be most dangerous to them. We're going to put this bloke on the chopping block and we're going to give it to him. So there was a lot of concerted effort on kick chase and grubber kicks and kicks into the, and when he returned the ball and where he was bringing himself in, you know, Latrell was very heavily marked. It's got to be better than that this week because Latrell will be thinking about how he gets around that. So they need to dominate him. I don't see that anyone else causes them trouble. I just don't see that. It's kind of like that. You know, Damien Cook, you know, is going to play a big role here, and is going to have to if they're going to turn the table on the Roosters, because the physical assault early was just too much for South Sydney, but the Roosters couldn't maintain it for the whole game. It's an interesting battle.
Tell me about Murray. Like when he went off, what did you see? How did you see that impact on South Sydney's effort, and having him back? What's that going to do?
Yeah, with both Murray and Cook
yeah.
off the field, and they're a tandem. They're a duo through the middle of the field with the attacking game, and certainly Murray with his defence. And Murray's very, very important to them. So that changed the dynamic of the game. Yeah, but that could happen this week.
It could. Yeah.
That could happen this week. It could happen in the first tackle this week.
Imagine if it did.
It could happen to one of the Rooster players. You know, it's Victor Radley knocked himself out in a tackle a couple of weeks ago. He's had a couple of weeks off and he's back in. And don't start me on tackling techniques.
Oh, this is so good. I'm excited. Give me a jumper. Let's go.
But this will be, and you know the thing about this, once these two teams have played each other twice, that's it for them. Doesn't matter who wins or loses. They won't be going any further because after 2 weeks of giving it to each other, they'll be cannon fodder for anyone else.
Oh, you reckon?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they'll completely knock each other out this weekend. One of them will advance because they win, but they're going to knock each other out. They're not going to be able to recover after this one. After 2 weeks of this, is my opinion.
I don't know who you're going to tip here.
Eh?
I don't know who you're going to tip here. I don't think you know who you're going to tip here.
Yeah, I do know who I'm going to tip. I think Rooster are the better team.
Right.
And I think Rooster can still win despite the fact Joey Manu's not playing. But South Sydney are a real live chance. Real live chance.
Which game are you looking forward to the most this weekend?
The most?
All of them?
Parramatta Panther.
Parramatta, yeah.
Parramatta Panther. Because I think it could be a grand final preview.
We predicted that at the start of the year.
Yeah, I think that could be a grand final preview.
What a weekend it is. If you're not excited after this, you'll never be excited. All the action here on 9. We've got all four finals, plus we've got 3 NRLW games. Saturday 1:05, Titans versus Eels. Saturday 2:50, so a double-header, Broncos versus Dragons, and Roosters Knights. I think we've got some cup football in there as well, Gus. It's all happening here on 9.
Finals time, the best time of the year.
And all the best with Tycoonis this weekend.
Yeah, if he runs.
Where's he in at? Remick?
He's in at Rose Hill. He's in the Theo Marks Stakes.
Ah, good.
And I just looked up before I came in here what barrier he had. Let me have a look.
The outside barrier. Mr. P. Gould, give him the outside.
They don't put me in the draw. He's barrier 12 in a field of 12, I think. I think was the...
It's not very generous, is it?
Where he was going to be.
Theo Marks.
Yeah, Theo Marks. So Tycoonis, Kathy O'Hara, barrier 12 in a field of 13. There's one emergency who drew barrier 9, so we'd come into 11. I don't know that he'll run. It's a good field.
Good race.
Yep.
$29 on BlueBet for Tycoonis.
Group 2 race.
Good luck.
But it was $15 before the barrier draw, which I thought was a bit short. Anyway, there'll be other days.
That's 6 tackles with Gus for this week. Week 1 of the finals. All the action to come, and we're back next week to have a look at what happened and maybe have a prediction on what might happen the week after. See you then.
You know the score. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-858-858 or your local state gambling helpline.